Of all the series that I've mentioned on my channel, very easily the one I've been most critical of is Pokemon. I know that it may seem scummy because of how much trubbish surrounds this series in general, but I think that a company worth as much as Game Freak is worth does warrant sort of a fine-tooth comb when playing them. Game Freak is a AAA empire that pretends it's an indie studio, and it's been incredibly clear that recent Pokemon games haven't been up to the standards of most people, myself included. Despite this, Pokemon fans operate under a strange Stockholm syndrome where they believe the games are still good even though the red flags may as well be glued to the front cover. I had told myself that I would not give the company another penny unless they followed through with a sequel to Legends Arceus, and what do you know? Game Freak actually delivered with a new Legends experience. I avoided most trailers and news except for the ones in the Nintendo Directs and the initial teaser trailer. Because of this, I went into the game nearly blind. I had heard rumors and massive amounts of leaks circulated the internet like high school rumors to the point where Egon might as well have been running the f***ing cybersecurity department at Game Freak. Not one Pokemon game has ever been free from criticism, but my f***ing god. This game has essentially a civil war brewing between those who think this game is being unfairly criticized and those who think the game is absolute feraligator feces. And that is the same as every single Pokemon release. But this feels a lot different. The difference here is Legends Arceus was mostly beloved by fans and even critics of the series for freshening up what has been an incredibly stagnant franchise. And honestly, I don't necessarily want to throw my hat into this ring because people are vicious with this game. But since I can't keep my goddamn mouth shut, I pretty much cornered myself into making this video. After putting hour upon hour into this game, battling, catching, and whatever you could call exploration, I can confidently say Pokemon Legends ZA, Zanma, Pokemon Legends ZA is just not enough. And I'm tired of everyone pretending that it is. If there's one thing I don't want to do, it would be reopening a can of worms that's been opened 1,000 times, so I'm just going to try to keep this bit here as short as possible. But I do think it is important just to talk about how we got here in the first place. When Pokemon X and Y were released, they were quickly touted as below the usual standard that Pokemon were known to be at. Black and White and Black and White 2 were beloved and are still considered to be some of the best that the series had seen. Now, personally, I haven't played them, but I can certainly see the quality difference between this and this. Pokemon X and Y have a nice slew of issues, like the really lacking story, the boring and milquetoast characters, the uninteresting enemy team, and the fumbling of Mega Evolutions, which, while I think are cool, are never really used properly. The pacing is glacial, and if you have the 3D turned on, you can expect your game to run very, very poorly, despite the 3D being the main gimmick of the console. I think the true crime, though, is making France canon in Pokemon. Game Freak never really took that jump from 2D to 3D very well, and unfortunately, they refused to ask for help from other developers. So the game just sat in this ethereal state of completely f***ed. For the most part, I think the 3D is cool and the environments are decent, but the poor optimization made playing this game slow and messy. The game simply failed in several critical areas. It felt more like a proof of concept than a true successor to the 2D Pokemon titles. Then after X and Y, we got Sun and Moon, which just further split opinions on the series for abandoning core traditional Pokemon values. And then, of course, Sword and Shield. Sword and Shield was a total embarrassment that was sold for full price, despite being bland, boring, and cutting half of the entire Pokemon roster so that they could get morons like me to pay for the DLC to buy the rest of it.
What are you? An idiot sandwich.
Then came Scarlet and Violet, which again split the fan base into two. Another set of games that I was vocally and openly critical of, and I stand by those criticisms. I think they were trying to do good things, but as Game Freak does, they just failed to implement these ideals into a properly made game. I think charging full price for this game borders on some sort of crime against the gullible. I don't care if there's possibly a fun game buried underneath. I don't see a scenario in which this game is worth even one game from the same year that somehow made less money. These are the circumstances we're coming into Legends ZA with, and this poses some pros and cons. The cons being most Pokemon fans accepted, albeit reluctantly, the state of the series by this point. They could release fucking anything and fans would eat it up, which is why Game Freak keeps doing this shit. But thinking with a more optimistic attitude, with a redo of the region, Game Freak could fix some of these minor issues and build off of the formula that was crafted with the previous Legends game. But what exactly was crafted? Seemingly, when I put out my Pokemon videos, I didn't get much pushback regarding Arceus, even though I ranked it as my 4th favorite Pokemon game. I think this alone just shows what Arceus did for fans. Whether it was warranted or not, whether you disagree with the quality of the environments or not, whether you think the gameplay is relatively unchanged, the game provided a sense of hope for fans. I think it did just enough to provide a different, unique, and fun gameplay loop that focused on what Pokemon has been about since it fucking released. Y'all remember that slogan? You know, the main slogan? Catch 'em all, Pokemon! Yeah, this game just kind of runs with that premise. The game is more about exploration of an old Sinnoh region while you catch wild Pokemon to create one of the first Pokedexes. It's a decidedly addictive game loop, and I constantly found myself getting lost or distracted from main missions trying to catch new and rare Pokemon. Battles normally took maybe less than half a minute, which made getting through exploration quick and satisfying. The battles took a backseat to the catching and exploration. It was a similar feeling I had from when I played Breath of the Wild. It was a free-form, immersive type of experience where the joy of catching Pokemon isn't buried under the weight of a million other mechanics. The open-world structure of Arceus, though far from perfect, felt new and fresh for the series. It might not have had the same vast, sprawling world of Breath of the Wild, but it took a lot of the same ideas and made them work within the Pokemon framework. Sure, the environments were a bit bland, the graphics weren't exactly Red Dead quality, and the mechanics were as simple as could be, but I think embracing this level of simplicity is what made the game so good. It's something that many Pokemon fans, much like myself, have wished for since the very first games. A game where I can just run around and chuck some balls. And I ain't talking Halo. By this point, I've been battling and collecting for the better part of 20 years. This game just allowed me to relax and focus on catching. It obviously had plenty of flaws and deservedly wasn't gonna get any love from Jeff Keighley at the Game Awards, but it was refreshing to actually explore. In previous Pokemon games, the environments were more like set pieces. Places you had to get through to reach the next gym or the next plot point. But in Arceus, the world wasn't just something you passed through. It was something you were encouraged to try and interact with. Whether you were climbing cliffs, sneaking through tall grass to catch a rare Pokemon, or just gazing at the distant mountains, there was always something that invited you to look deeper, to explore further. It was a mostly successful release, with even some very harsh critics of the series giving it flowers for refreshing a very moldy formula.
If they do keep trying to go in this direction, I imagine in the next, 5 years, they'll make one that actually, fucking slaps, but like I said, it's definitely a step in the right direction for a very, very stale formula that they've been recycling for 20 years.
Metacritic, favorable reviews. IGN, favorable reviews. GameSpot, favorable reviews. Backlogged, favorable reviews. Even Donkey liked this game, and I don't remember the last time he liked Pokemon or even a turn-based JRPG at that. All of this is to show how, after years of self-sabotage, Game Freak finally got one right. They finally did one properly. Because of this, the mess that was Scarlet and Violet was nearly insulting to me for abandoning some of the things that made Arceus great. And I'm not just talking about the traditional mechanics, but even some of the quality of life shit that just didn't make it over that I personally complained about almost 2 years ago. I was vocal and said that unless Pokemon released another Legends game, I was not giving Pokemon games any more of my hard-earned quiche. And these, my friends, are the stakes we are going into regarding Legends ZA. When Legend ZA was announced, man, I can't lie, I was pretty excited. After what we had seen with Arceus, I was much more willing to give this game the old college try than any other mainline Pokemon garbage. As for what I knew before the game released, I watched the teaser trailer and that original reveal thingy, so I went into this game mostly unassuming. I will say the idea of moving that Arceus formula into a world map that is just a city definitely raised some concerns on my part, but I was willing to give the benefit of the doubt. Now, something I want to get out of the way immediately is I do not own a Switch 2, and I have no plans to buy a Switch 2 in the near future. I did think about emulating this, but after struggling with Ryujinx for like an hour, I figured the best way to put my money where my mouth is was to spend the $60 and play this on my Switch. Before I see the 400 comments that say my experience was tied to the performance of the Switch 1, I raise you this. This game was announced and advertised to work and play on the original Switch. At the time of announcement, we could assume, but there were no announcements about the Switch 2 yet. So, in my eyes, this game seemed deliberately built to work on a Switch 1. I didn't get mad at people for buying Cyberpunk on the base PS4 because it was advertised to work on that console, and I think I should get the same courtesy here. But truthfully, I don't think that this game ran all that badly on the Switch 1, and actually ran better than I expected, so there's your one compliment, Legend ZA. And I'll keep from bitching about things like the lack of voice acting, because at this point, I'm just complaining about something that we all know needs to be fixed. Now, with all of the asides aside, let's get into the meat here. Legend ZA is one of the single most disappointing releases of any video game I think I've ever played. And while I wasn't expecting a divine revelation of the series, I expected something great that was built on the success of the first Legends game. And what I got in return was a test of my faith. And I'm kinda at a loss on where to even begin. I suppose let's start with the setting. Lumiose City is one of the brighter spots of the original Gen 6 experience. It's a cool 3D environment that was actually one of the few things about X and Y that kinda caught my attention. On paper, a game set entirely in Lumiose City, the beating heart of Kalos, doesn't really sound all that bad. A dense urban Pokemon experience where the focus shifts from wide open fields, icy tundras, and soupy swamps to vertical exploration, alleys, and rooftops? That could have been something special, but instead what we got was a game that somehow managed to feel smaller than Arceus. Lumiose City in Legend ZA is somehow barren and too full at the same time. I do often appreciate smaller maps because usually it means the fun stuff is kinda concentrated and less spread apart, but that doesn't really work in a game where you're supposed to explore a land littered with little monster dudes. I've seen discourse about the entire city being one model, and I cannot confirm or deny these rumors, mostly because I don't care. It seems more like a smoke signal to me. This map could be 4,000 models, and it would still be bland, boring, and uninspired. Nothing in Lumiose City is captivating or interesting. Nothing is pulling you into a state of discovery. Traversal is a big problem I have here. Not only is there nothing interesting in Lumiose City to discover, other than like the 5 buildings that provide nothing more than random shop menus or story objectives, but you get 2 traversal options. You can run, or you can fast travel. And if there's no reason to explore, then I'm just gonna fast travel everywhere because what else is the point? If you're gonna give me the ability to use these ladders and elevators to climb buildings, why the did you cut out the roller skates that are integral to the identity of X and Y? Yeah, there's no bike, no skateboard, no jetpack, no hoverboard, no scooter, no Heelys, and no roller skates. You just run and run to seemingly nowhere. Normally, this wouldn't be so bothersome if Arceus didn't give you the ability to fly, climb, swim, and ride a deer across a vast landscape filled with Pokemon. Like in Legends Arceus, I'm f***ing... This map feels more restrictive. This map feels less about engaging with environments and discovery like in Arceus. It feels more like a backdrop to the true vision they had for the series, which was a watered-down Xenoblade battle simulator. But let me slow down because I am getting a bit ahead of myself. I think what bothers me about the setting and ZA the most is the wild zones. In Legends Arceus, it wasn't so much an open world, it was an open zone. This kept players from getting into situations where they couldn't compete fundamentally with the game's mechanics. I actually didn't mind this, and each zone provided different discovery opportunities, landscapes, and Pokemon. In Lumiose City, each wild zone is a designated blocked off section of the city, typically in some sort of park or random alleyway that kind of just feels plunked onto the world itself. Let's do a little experiment. I'm going to show you 3 different wild areas in Legends Arceus, and then I'm going to show you 1 wild zone in Legends ZA. You see, I feel bad for possibly deceiving you, but what I have shown you is 3 different wild zones from Legends ZA, and only 1 zone from Legends Arceus. Now, I'm not saying the environments in Arceus are pretty or well designed, but they're certainly more interesting to explore than one city. Allegedly, there were rumors of there being catacombs similar to those in real-life France, where there would be cool Pokemon and other junk. And not to spoil, that's a lie. But no, this game has some random sewers that are nothing more than hedge mazes with like 6 or 7 different types of Pokemon. These wild zones are such horseshit, dude. Each of them feels copy-pasted, and there's only like 7 or 8 different types of Pokemon each, sometimes repeating themselves. This game has a completely different gameplay philosophy. Quickly, let's just go over the game loop. Okay, so basically your objective here is to go from a rank Z trainer to a rank A trainer. It runs on a day-night cycle, where during the day you catch Pokemon, and at night you go to a designated battle zone to get a ticket to beat a trainer that will level you up 1 rank. After a few ranks, during the day, you can defeat rogue mega evolved Pokemon, and these are fairly similar to the frenzied Pokemon in Legends Arceus. Essentially, once you have your team built, it's just defeat the rogue megas and then duke it out at night. Alright, you got all that? Okay, so for the most part, I don't think this is an awful system if it wasn't so boring after you beat your first set of rogue megas. Initially, I thought the Z to A trainer ranking system was interesting, and I was like, oh, they're not gonna spoon feed this to me, this game is gonna be pretty long. That is until you just skip from rank V to rank fucking F.
I'm waiting to trade. Hey, they put Tyler on national TV?
Wait, okay, so I'm going from rank V. What the fuck? Oh my god! They're like, hey, just skip half the fucking game. Why did it rank me up so far?
It's supposed to be one at a time, dude.
I thought it was. It could have made the game a lot longer if they did that. Do you think it's because I couldn't come up with that many characters?
I think it's because they couldn't come up with that many zones to dignify you having to go 1 by 1.
What the fuck? That's so stupid. In retrospect, honestly, if I had to do this rank by rank, I probably would have self-deleted in real life, but it feels unearned and bizarre. As I said, it was very clear that this game wanted to be more battle-focused. They changed the battle system here pretty drastically. If you thought that Xenoblade comment earlier was a joke, it wasn't. Instead of turn-based battling, this game is more of an action RPG. What you do is you send out a Pokemon and battle by using moves that operate on a cooldown. So if you use a move like Tackle, that move will be on a cooldown until it recharges. But you are more than welcome to use the other 3 moves in your arsenal. I think this would be an interesting system if it were implemented properly, but the problem is it wasn't implemented properly. God, I have so many problems with this goofy ass battle system that it could be its own fucking chapter. Alright, so some moves feel completely useless, specifically some of the status effect moves. In previous Pokemon games, effects like confusion, paralysis, and sleep were volatile and were useful for different battle strategies. In this game, the only status moves that really felt effective were poison, burn, and freezing. Freezing specifically, because this status effect will kill a Pokemon 9 times out of 10. So unless you're using using moves that might boost attack or defense, I didn't see much of a reason to have moves that weren't damaging. It's really hard to properly position your Pokemon to be in the right spot because it uses an invisible marker to determine where you send your Pokemon. So sometimes they get stuck on random geometry, fall off buildings, and run into moves getting into the marker. There were times where I would get spotted by a trainer on a roof above me and I wouldn't be able to hit their Pokemon because of the elevation difference. So I would have to waste time and slowly run along to get to the top of the building to fight them. Does this seem fun yet? And these are pretty much the only obstacles stopping you in Legend ZA. This game is stupid easy, and I only lost 2, count 'em, 2 battles. The first one against the Loan Shark, and the second being the final battle to Tawny. The first one was because his Gyarados kept using Bounce, so all of my moves would constantly miss, and Tawny because at that point I was autopiloting to get to the end, so I just lost the ability to give a f***. Otherwise, I didn't lose any of the rogue battles, and all of the other trainers were piss fucking easy. One thing that does make the game easier is the way they handle Mega Evolutions. Mega Evolutions are totally busted, and even at a type disadvantage, will still wipe teams because of the inclusion of this new thing they call plus moves. Not to mention, you can Mega Evolve potentially more than once in a battle, so there's genuinely no shot you should lose any battle unless you're under-leveled, or there's some protect or bounce cheese. The game is just too easy and doesn't pose any threat or challenge to the player, so there's no fucking stakes. So we have a poorly implemented battle system and setting. What about the story? Jesus f***. Pokemon has always been lacking in the story department, even in games that I like, but the Legend ZA story is truly a fucking embarrassment. Much like the gameplay, the story feels like it has no stakes. In fact, it feels like everyone is too friendly. In Fire Emblem Three Houses, they will stroke my ego to Kingdom Come, but at least there's some sort of villain to work against. In this game, everyone is your friend. From the trainers, to the government, to the f***ing loan sharks? Of course, Pokemon is depraved enough to make the f***ing loan sharks the good guys. Imagine if you were playing Yakuza 0 and Kuze was actually the good guy. Because of this, the story, again, has no sauce or flavor. No one is opposing me, and to all these characters, I'm essentially God. The only time that there was a pubic hair of opposition was when Team Flare got their soft reboot, and even then, they are no threat to the player whatsoever. So the game is telling me here that I can trust random strangers, loan sharks, the 1%, streamers, and the government? Yeah, I'm pretty sure these are poor values to instill into the children who have no media literacy playing this turd. The story fucking drags, and all they do is talk in circles about literally nothing. The story objectives are so flavorless, like, hey, clear out all of these mega herpes from the sewers because you, we said so. Is this fun? Is this what some people are calling the best Pokemon game ever made? I just don't see it. And this game stands independently as bad. Like, forget about Arceus. Even if Legends Arceus never fucking existed, this game would still have anti-homeless benches. I don't get it. I would normally say Game Freak just clearly isn't inspired or talented anymore, but I can't even say that when they're revealing other games that look like they have even a touch of soul to them. Nah, yeah, I can't do this anymore.
It's basically a biblical story about a man, Job, who God essentially tears his life apart as a test of his faith and his love.
I didn't buy this game on release. I didn't want to. I saw nothing but overtly positive or overtly negative opinions on this game from the second it was released. I didn't want to become part of this toxic Pokemon cycle where a game releases and I'm disappointed by it, only to be told that I've grown out of it, or I can't have fun, or whatever bullshit excuse is lodged against me. There are plenty of series that I've been playing since childhood that have continued to capture my attention because they meaningfully innovate and create worthwhile experiences for the consumer. This year, I've played so many games that are less expensive than Legend ZA. I played Chronos, Session, Night Rain, It Takes Two, Star Trucker, Alan Wake, Astrobot's Playroom, AI the Somnium Files, Balatro, and so many others that feel like better deals than a broken, outdated, poorly implemented formula that makes me depressed. But thinking about it more clearly, after completing the game, all I can think is, am I the problem? So many of my YouTube colleagues and friends talked to me and said, Kyler, you have to make a video on Legend ZA. Look at all the views everyone is getting because of it. Whether intentionally or not, I have now fallen into this toxic gaming creator cycle that consumes my reality. I went into this game knowing I was gonna hate it. I knew it was gonna be shitty just based on what I saw. And because of this, whether in the front or back of my mind, I decided that I could give my negative take on this game because that's just what I feel like I have to do. I've never been one to be quiet or mince words about something I don't like. If I don't feel like I'm being given a good product, I'm not gonna defend the billion-dollar company. And I think that's where I finally had to stop and ask myself, what's the point anymore? Why am I still doing this? It's not even about the games at this point. It's about the loop. The release trailer drops, the discourse flares up, the hype builds, the disappointment hits, and then the creators, people like me, swoop in to pick at the bones. I'm no better than a vulture. The outrage becomes content. The content becomes currency, and before you know it, we're right back to where we started, waiting for the next reveal, the next cycle, the next test of faith. Maybe I'm not Job. Maybe I am the tragedy in this story. Because when I was a kid, Pokemon wasn't content, it was comfort. It was that spark of discovery, of catching that Snorlax and feeling like the world opened up just a little bit wider. Somewhere along the way, that joy just turned into homework. It became an obligation, a responsibility to have an opinion, to express my disappointment. It's kind of funny because that's where Job ends up too. After all of the trials, after all of the suffering, he doesn't really get a clean answer. Game Freak isn't gonna sit me down and make a game specifically catered to my taste. I just have to accept that maybe some things are beyond my control. Maybe I finally have to let go. Maybe it's time to stop treating every Pokemon release like a moral referendum on my childhood. Maybe it's okay to admit that I've changed and that the series hasn't kept up with me. And that's fine. It doesn't mean Pokemon is evil or that I'm bitter or that anyone who enjoys ZA is wrong. It just means I'm done letting this franchise decide how I feel about myself as a fan, as a creator, and as a person who loves video games. Because when I strip away all of the noise, the discourse, the algorithms, the nostalgia, I still remember what it felt like to play those games for the first time. That spark, that wonder, that tiny flicker of faith that said, gotta catch 'em all. And even if that magic isn't in Pokemon anymore, I know I'll find it somewhere else. Maybe my faith wasn't strong enough to survive Legends ZA, but maybe Pokemon can one day give me my next Legends Arceus. A title that rekindles my love for a game that was intrinsic to my childhood life. Or maybe not, I don't know. This game just kind of f***ing sucks.